Hello students, today we're going to do 5.4 G and H, and it's solving problems involving volume. The reason there's two different letters is because G represents the picture portion of volume and H represents just problems involving volume. So, as you know, volume has one solid formula, which is volume equals your length times your width times your height. Okay? Now, if I was to draw something in, I would label it. I always label everything. Okay? So, my length would be right here. My width would be right over here on this side. But since you can't really see it, I'm going to put it on this side. This is my width. And my height is how tall it is. Okay. Now all you're doing is you're multiplying those three numbers. Now the whole purpose for volume is that you're filling it in with something. They want to know how much can fit inside a box, a cube, just a container. Okay, so as an example, I have this box, my expo box, and I'll give you an example later. All right, so that's one of the formulas. Now, volume can also be represented by area times height. And I'm going to put the previous one at the top. And it can also be base times height. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and draw in a figure just so that you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Now, base. Base means the same thing in Spanish, la base. La base, it's the bottom, right? So the base, or the base, is the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and shade it in. First, I need to know how much I have at the bottom, and then I need to know how many layers of it do I have, all right? So the base is still the length times width. The length times the width, so that's the first part, length times width, which is also the area, and it's also the base. All right? So the height is the layers, is how tall it is, right? That's the height. Height. Now, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but here's a way that you can think about it. So, I bought bread yesterday, and I thought it was a perfect visual representation of layers. Now, if you notice, right, bread is cut into layers. If I wanted to find the volume of this loaf of bread, I would find the area of the base, right? The length times the width. Length times the width, or length times the width. And then I would see how many layers I have, okay? So that's volume. Volume is anything 3D, okay? You want to know the capacity of something, okay? So that's why I always make the students, or y'all need to know these three. The length times the width, area times height, and base times height, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and erase this. And yes, I will revisit this formula because I always write it down for every problem. So now, the vocabulary that is associated with this is anything that has a 3D figure. If you're filling it in. If you're only looking for the area of the base, then you're only looking for the area. But if you're filling it in completely, then you're trying to look for the volume. All right. 3D figures include like a rectangular prism, a cube, And the cube is my favorite. And capacity. Okay. Capacity. Oops. All right. Now in class, what we did to fill in the cubes or rectangular prisms, remember we had those itty bitty little squares. Of course, I don't have any here, but that's what we would fill in, and we would find the volume for it. Okay, so those itty bitty squares that y'all used to play with, yep, I can use those to fill in this box. And once I count them all up, that's the volume. All right, so I'm literally putting in those itty bitty little cubes inside of here all the way to the top, remember, and then we would count them. So of course counting each little cube would take forever, so that's why we find the measurements. Okay, so now for the purpose of this exercise, I will measure this box. So I need to find the length. All right, so the length is right here. Okay, so I'm gonna do centimeters, and I'm gonna round to the nearest centimeter so it can be even. So now if you notice, this is pretty close to 8, so I'm gonna leave the length at 8. Okay, so my length is 8. Let me go ahead and erase this. My width is how I always say how fat it is, so how thick it is. It's from 0 and it's pretty close to 6, so I'm gonna put it at 6. So my width, 6 centimeters, and my height. How many layers of the bottom do I need? Well, in this case, I need about 13, because it is closer to 13 than it is to 12. It's at 12 and a half. So a half is actually goes over to the next number. So my height is 13 centimeters. Okay, so I've just made notes of the information that I got from the box. You should make notes from the information that you get from the problem as well. Okay, underline it, write down, drawing a model, and label it. So if I had a model, which I'm about to do, the bottom would be 8 for my length, 6 for my width, and my height would be 13. Okay, that's my expo box. So now what I have to do is, according to my formula will tell me that I need to multiply. Volume equals length times width times height, which equals volume equals 8 times 6 times 13. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and erase my notes so I can do my math. Whoops, actually erase my model as well. It's okay though. So now I know that 8 times 6 is 48. So now I'm doing 48 times 13. Here is the lattice that some of the kids use. So I'm gonna split up the top because I have two numbers for 48, 4 and 8. And I have two numbers on the side, so I'm gonna split up this side to two numbers, 1 and 3. Notice I'm not putting the place value, I'm just putting the number that is in the place value, and then I'm gonna break my windows in half. I always start at a corner because it's easier that way. So then I'm gonna go ahead and multiply it like in an L. So 1 times 8 is 8. So I'd put a 0 at the top and an 8 at the bottom. 8 times 3 give me 24. So the 2 goes at the top and the 4 goes at the bottom. Yes, my 2 is really ugly. I'm writing upside down. 4 times 1 is 4. And 4 times 3 would give me 12. So the 1 goes at the top and the 2 goes at the bottom. Then I'm going to add. I'm adding in diagonal. So 4 plus nothing is 4. 8 plus 2, 10. 10 plus 2, 12. So 2 goes down. And the one that you're carrying over, you put it in the next column or the next strip. I always circle it so I won't forget it. So 4 plus 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6, and there's nothing here, so you're good. So my answer is this number that appears right here, and it's 624 cubic centimeters. And that's my answer. 624 cubic centimeters. Okay, and so that's how you do volume. Okay, now remember that you are in 5th grade and they'll throw things where you have to work backwards. Okay, so when you work backwards, you have to think that volume, of course, is length times width times height, right? So what would be the opposite of multiplication? Well, the opposite of multiplication is division. All right. So now, give me 1 second. All right. So now, if they tell you that the volume is 24 centimeters cubed, okay? And they give you the length. The length is 4. And the width is 2. You want to know the height, okay? But you already know the volume. So you can set up your equation. You already have the volume, so I'm going to put the 24 right here, okay? I'm going to use a different color so you can see what I'm doing. So you already have volume. Volume can go right where the volume is at. So 24 equals, you have the length. They gave you the length, so just plug it in. And they gave you the width, which is 2. All I'm missing is my height. Okay? So now I can go ahead and do 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is what? 8. So I know that 24 equals 8 times h. You see that? How do I get that h by itself? What's the opposite of multiplication? Ding, 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 ding. Division. So I divide this side by 8. And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So 24 divided by 8. Remember that this bar right here means divide. I'm gonna put it right here on the side. So 24 divided by 8 would give you what? 3. So h equals 3. And that's working backwards, guys. Okay, where you have to find a missing piece. All right, so for today, you can start with page 221, and then I will post the rest later. Thank you, guys.